Welcome everybody. You're all coming in. I'm Isha. I'm a family medicine resident, PGY1 at Cooper Hospital. And I'm just going to introduce you guys to all the rest of the ambassadors. So happy to have them all here for us and for you to answer the questions. So Jessica, why don't we start with you?
Hi guys, I'm Jessica. I am a PGY3 neurology resident at University of Missouri, Kansas City. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks for joining. Okay, Jesus, how do you like to be called?
Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm from Venezuela. I am PGY1, general surgery here in Larkin Community Hospital in South Miami, Florida. That's it. Sure.
Sarang.
Oh, hi, my name is Sarang. I am a Filipino graduate, but I'm Korean and I'll be applying this year for Match 2023.
Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I am a PGY2 anesthesia resident in Rutgers, New Jersey. I am also an IMG. Yes.
Avantika.
Hey guys, I'm Avantika. I am an IMG from India and applying to the Beats match this year.
Caitlin.
Is my volume on? Yeah, okay, great. My name is Caitlin. Some of you guys might know me as Prescription Fitness MD. You can call me whatever, I guess. I am a PGY3 internal medicine resident at Temple University Hospital in Philadelphia. Lord Jesus, the end is near. And I'm super excited to be here tonight.
Yes, love it. Arti.
Hi guys, I'm currently a fourth year with Ross University and I'll be applying for this 23 match year.
And Edwin.
Hello everyone, I'm Edwin, PGY2 Neurology. The end is not near for me, it's actually in the middle of the fire. And I'm training in Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, DC, and I'm a PGY2, as I said, and then I'm IMG as well.
Okay, amazing. So thank you everybody that's joining us. Your match resident ambassadors decide to get together and we're just gonna run some topics and maybe talk a little bit about them. And then if you guys have questions, you can ask and we'll go through them. So I think the first topic we're gonna talk about is the application process, the supplemental app, if you have any questions, or the ERAS app. Do you wanna start or do you just wanna have people ask questions?
I think we can maybe have people ask questions, like if they don't understand. I mean, like the whole application process can be confusing. I didn't do supplemental applications, so I don't know about all that nonsense, but.
So I did talk about. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I did use a supplemental application last year, which is, the first time that they use supplemental applications. It was just for a few of the the specialties like internal medicine and general surgery. Now there's about 15 different specialties, and they're being a little bit more specific. I think they had the first part. It's there. You have 5 opportunities to describe 5 meaningful experiences in your life. And my recommendation is that it doesn't have to be just, related to medicine, but it can be related to anything that is meaningful in your life, whatever area, maybe art, music, sports, religion, anything is special for you. After, filling all those 5, you don't have to have 5. It can be 3, 2, 4, or just 1. Doesn't matter the amount, or you can just not do, you can completely avoid the supplemental if you want. Okay, so it's supplemental, it's not mandatory. That's important. Somebody asked that. Then you have like a impactful, one impactful experience that you shows like hardships or something related with your background, with your economic difficulties or something like that. And then you have the other stuff like You can about the area that you want to apply. So if you have certain or if you want to go to a specific geographic area. I think that's pretty much the supplemental application. If somebody else wants to speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. So for supplemental app, I guess the most important part is when they ask you about the experiences, and since I've just got done with my supplemental app, I think they're kind of looking for what you learned from the experience rather than the experience per se, because a lot of people end up just describing the experience that you have an option to list at least 5 to 7 experience that really meant something to you and what really made you choose the specialty or as a doctor. So what I would recommend is don't really describe the experience while you're writing about it. In fact, you can talk about what you learned from the experience, like what values did you learn? Did it make you more empathetic or compassionate as a doctor? Is it something that enhanced you to like develop your scientific thinking skills? Try to think out of the box, try to think of ways that really, for that experience really changed you or gave you like newer skills that you didn't have before. So that's something that I felt was kind of different, and I wanted to address that.
Yeah, I feel like I can actually kind of go off of that again, similar to Jessica. When we applied, there was no such thing as supplemental applications. There was no such thing as virtual interviews. We did it the old school way. But basically what I've been counseling people on for these supplemental applications, again, taking it with a grain of salt because I didn't actually have to fill one out, is to remember that you are writing experiences on your ERAS CV. Chances are you're also including some type of experiences in your personal statement. Your MSPE also has a bunch of experiences that you've done that, especially if you go to a Caribbean medical school, you usually get to choose which ones go on your MSPE. And so the supplemental application at that point can seem a little redundant if you keep putting the same experience over and over and over again. So what I've basically been telling people is if they're facing this same challenge, is to think about patient encounters you've had. These don't have to be specific structured experiences that you've had, like Jesus has said. They can be, perhaps like the first time you lost a patient when you were in rotations, the first time you had to break bad news to a family. All of those are skills you're going to use as a doctor, and chances are they've given you other skills and have impacted you in ways that things that you typically write on your ERAS application in your experience section don't. And the other thing is think about like research. If you've presented it at a conference, if you've had to write your first manuscript and do a literature review, like you don't write this stuff in your ERAS application. You kind of just list the publication or you list the conference that you presented at under the abstracts. But realistically, these are all experiences that you can expand on, and they can really enhance your supplemental application too.
And also to add to that, actually based on the analysis they made from last year's supplemental application. So yeah, the NRMP released like a data analysis basically reported by the program directors about how they utilize the supplemental application. And basically the most important part actually of the supplemental application is the signaling. So for internal medicine, you can signal 7 programs, and there's like a specific number of programs you can signal per specialty. And the meaningful experiences, it is important, but signaling which hospitals you signal are more important because the program directors see that like, oh, this person really likes our program and I want to know why they signaled my program. And so that kind of gives like a hint of like someone like telling you that like I really like you kind of thing. And so the meaningful experiences, you can actually write only 300 characters on it, which is actually really short. It's only 2 to 3 sentences. If you like fill it up, like it's very limited. So as long as you mention what was most valuable for you and not what you actually did, because that can be like redundant as Caitlin said. So as long as you focus on what was So someone asked in the chat, how do you signal a program? So basically on the supplemental application, there is a section where they ask you which specialty you're applying to. So if you click internal medicine, they will give you like a area where you can actually choose the programs that are participating in the supplemental application, because not all programs are actually participating. And so there will be like a scroll down of selection of programs that you can select. And if you already have a program in mind, you can actually select the programs. And for if you chose internal medicine, then you can actually put, there's like a 7 slots. So then you can choose like 7. For pedia, you can choose 5 and etc. So yeah.
Sorry, go, Asha.
Sorry, I added the link in the chat for everybody just to, so everybody knows which programs are participating. So this is not just limited to peds, IM, there's a lot of different specialties. I know FM is not participating, but do check if which programs are. Sorry, Cynthia, go ahead.
So I was going to say, just adding on to what you said, yeah, so a lot of new programs are joining the supplemental application this year. So a lot of programs and specialties didn't use it last year when they first started it. So, you know, for anesthesia, for example, this is going to be the first time they're using it. So we don't really have data out there on how they're going to be using it and how it's going to affect your application. So like everyone's been saying, and like I'm just going to echo that as well, like supplemental application is a supplemental application. Like the main part of the application should still be your ERAS application, especially with a lot of programs using it for the first time this year. I think it's just going to start building data for them for the next few years to, you know, like towards how they take students and how they take their match applicants.
Yeah, I agree. I think the important thing to kind of remember amongst all of this, I know there's like a lot of changes going on with the match right now. Most programs are using supplemental applications. Step 1's going pass fail, blah, blah, blah. And now they're talking about doing this whole like early match thing where then like the SOAP becomes like on match day or whatever that they haven't sorted out yet. But the thing to keep in mind in all of this is like, sure, it sounds scary to you because it's all new. So it is scary, but programs also don't know what they're doing with this stuff yet either, because it's not like they get a chance to run through this stuff. They kind of just have to do what they've normally been doing and then adjust that. So it's just as new to them as it is to you. And I think that's important to keep in mind as you go through this whole changing match process.
So I think we're having a couple of questions in the Q&A. Someone asks, can we signal programs where we have done our rotations? Honestly, yes, you should. But again, since you've already done your rotation there, they already know you, right? So instead of that, you can signal other programs where you haven't done your rotations or where you weren't able to rotate. So it's like a yes or no answer. If you really like the program and you want to match there, go ahead, signal them. It's like a double sign that since you're rotated there and then they've written you a letter of recommendation. And of course you will, you know, end up matching. I mean, if you want to end up matching there, go ahead and signal them. But in case you have rotated there, and you know, you would want to like cast a wider net and signal programs that you haven't really interacted with, or for example, you haven't rotated there, but you're really interested in the program. So signaling is a way to show interest in those. So does anyone else want to answer this?
I don't know if things have changed from last year to this year, but last year when I did do some IM programs, we were not allowed to signal the places we did rotations at the hospital. It was outside of those.
So I think they just say if your home institution tells you not to signal them, then you don't need to signal them because it's up to the home institution to decide. So this year I didn't really see it as part of the rules, but a lot of people again are trying to figure out whether they want to signal the programs they rotated at, or you know, not do the same. So I guess if it's your home country institution and you have rotated there, then don't signal them, because in case they specifically tell you not to do so, don't do that. But I guess the rest of it is okay.
I think maybe something to keep in mind is like, at least I know from a neurology program standpoint, I feel like the virtual interview might be just a thing from now on, just for like equity standpoint. That way, you know, opportunities to interview at places is a little more equal. You know, people don't have to travel and stuff like that. So especially if it's an institution that like you have maybe rotated at and you're in contact physically with those people that are involved in the decision making, that's just maybe something to take into consideration when you are signaling programs, because not everybody's going to have the opportunity to physically be there. So I really think that the whole thing with supplemental applications and all of this stuff is just to allow a more equal like playing field, kind of, as far as like the whole interview season.
Yeah, and there's another question of, should I only signal programs that I have high chances to match in according to the match residence program list, or should I try using on programs where it would be more competitive for me to match? So my 2 cents of this, and this what I'm kind of using for my supplemental areas, is that out of 5 programs, there are 2 programs that I feel are really competitive, but somewhere that I would definitely love to match at. There would be 3 programs that I would definitely signal as a safety net, as programs that I really like, but they're also really IMG friendly and maybe not that competitive. So you can you can definitely signal like both types of programs. It's really up to you and your profile and how, and of course where the programs are located and anything else you like about the program. So make sure that you don't base your signalings on programs that, for example, if you're an IMG and if they don't sponsor visas, or if they've taken like 1 or 2 IMGs like out of like 30 positions, then try to make sure that you signal smartly. So that's what I wanted to say.
Amazing. I think we have hit the nail on the head with that topic. We will go on to virtual open houses and meet and greets. Basically what we think that you should expect from them and what you should probably be bringing into the table. Start with whoever wants to go and speak about this.
Yeah, so from Georgetown University Hospital, we're gonna have 3 open houses. We usually do 3 because we want to have like an open space for other applicants to kind of learn more about our program, what we have to offer, and basically things that we do on a regular basis. So our first open house is going to be somewhere in September. Those who follow me on my Instagram account, you can see where the date is. I just posted there. And we basically are going to do what the typical things that we do on our weekends off. We're gonna go to one of our co-residents' house, and we're just gonna have fun there. And then we're just gonna bring the house down there and just be ourselves. And then you're just going to join us and make questions while we're having chips and drinks. So that's a good way to kind of, in a more personal level. And that's basically what we want. I don't know the experience from other programs, but at least in mine, we try to be very collegial with each other. And we want to be able to people see that face, because residency is really hard. And their programs are, unfortunately, they're toxic. They just are. Mm-hmm. So it's a good way for you to be able to tee it up by kind of joining these events, and you can get to meet people and you can see where you really want to be and where you just don't want to be. And then I think it's a great overview, so you can see those kind of little details on the personal level of the people you're going to be working directly for the next 3 or 4 years. So definitely try to go there. I'm going to be very honest with you all, those who are listening or tuning in. We don't really have a way into saying which applicant is going to be accepted or not. It's not like you're gonna go to our open house and we're gonna tell you, oh yeah, we love that person, please, we nominate this person or whatever. No, it's an opportunity for you to see us. It's an opportunity for you to screen us if we actually are a match for you, because there are very few things in the match algorithm that actually will benefit the applicant. One is the algorithm itself, and the other one is you and your decisions and kind of seeing these events kind of playing out, so you feel empowered where do you want to go and not to go. So at least in my program now we're doing 3, and I will keep you guys updated about it.
I will add to that, I think it's very important from the applicant side that people do go to virtual open houses. I know personally that people that I connected with or networked, residents actually gave my name in, and I did receive an interview. So for me, it was beneficial. For me, it was a great way to show I could ask introspective questions about the program and get my face out there in a small cohort of people. My program, they are not holding a virtual open house, but what they are doing is that all the people that visited them at their booth at the AAFP conference, they are reviewing all of those applications personally. So these are not just places for you to see the program, but I also think it's a very great way for you to network and really just show who you are compared to what you are on paper. So if you have the chance to go, use Med Twitter. All the programs mainly post all of their open houses on Twitter. So
yes.
I agree. I think kind of going off that also, just before I lose my thought, is again, virtual open houses is something I didn't experience, but I think as someone who's organizing pre-interview dinners this year as part of my chief responsibilities, I think the biggest difference, like if I could put myself back in your shoes, that the virtual open houses make is that it allows you to ask those questions, and like Esha and Edward were both saying, it allows you to screen the programs a little more guilt-free, right? So you haven't even received the interview yet. The people who are in the virtual open house with you, the co-applicants, like they haven't received an interview invite yet either. It's literally a much less stressful environment than when you are offered the interview. Sure, you're going to go to the pre-interview dinner and it's going to feel like the same thing. The program's going to be giving you the same information. It's not going to be any different. You're also going to be screening the residents and their work-life balance and kind of, how they interact with one another. But the more important thing is, like, at that point, you're going to have the pressure of interview day on you. And like, as much as I tell people, don't be stressed about interviews, like you're still going to feel that way. And those people at that point, they have also been invited for an interview, and they're going to be like, you're going to feel like they're your competitors. Whereas at the virtual open houses, it's toned down a little bit more. No, it's like, no harm, no foul. No one's received an interview. You're literally just there to learn, make connections. And like, at worst case scenario, if you don't get an interview from there, maybe you met like an applicant or two that you'll connect with in the future. Maybe, it's just one more way to like be expanding your network. So I think take it as like a little bit more of a stress-free rather than a stressful situation, and kind of I don't want to tell you to save the stress for interview day, but it's going to feel that way. Make sure that this feels a little bit more stress-free.
Yes, I want to add something. I agree with my previous, like Edwin and all of you guys. I think on the, I did a lot of open houses last season. I went to a lot of them, and you can, like as Edwin says, you can evaluate them. There's very different. One of them were, like a super organized, the program director were there, they did like a formal explanation and everything about the program, even rotations. Well, I felt like was very serious, meeting. And the other was like just with the residents in the sofa drinking and eating cheese, like, so you can see what, like, okay, this is like a more formal academic program. This is more chill. The residents are getting together more often. I mean, you see that, the environment of the program. And I agree with I agree as well with Caitlin about, it kind of help you, especially if you haven't done for IMGs, sometimes it's very difficult, these kind of interviews, virtual interviews, because we usually don't do this kind of interviews on our countries. So it's like the first time that you are getting some interviews as an open house, try to speak a little, do some questions, try to answer something, try to, to practice your elevator pitch, saying, I'm this, I want to ask you, I want to ask this, ask that, to try to practice that, virtual kind of experience. I think it's going to help you a lot. So try to go to the virtual open house. It really helped me. And then you can get info about them, emails, contacts, you can reach out to them later, and they will help you. If they are willing to help you, they will do it.
Yeah, completely agree. If anybody has any questions, drop them in, but we will move on to the next topic. What to expect for interviews? No, actually before that, I think we should talk about dual applying. Should we talk about that? Why is it good to dual apply or try apply? I know myself, I applied to like 3 different specialties. So it's a lot of work, but I think that in my opinion, it's good. It's good to have different opportunities, and a lot of specialties overlap. Like FM can overlap with a lot of internal medicine, primary care kind of fields, or even FM can overlap with a lot of psych. So yeah. What
Do you want to do this where we go like down the line so everyone has a chance to answer?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with you.
Okay. Or do you have anything else to say? Because you said you kind of did you dual apply?
I applied to actually 3 different specialties.
Okay.
I wrote 3 different versions of my personal statement, all curtailed to each different specialty. I personally never advertised it. I don't think it's something that you need to advertise, but I think it's something that we all do. Most of us do. I can't say that we all do it. And I don't think that it should be frowned upon personally, because what you like in one specialty can be found in a different specialty, and you can show that in your interviews, you can show that in your application. So yeah, that's my opinion on dual applying.
So I also yes, I did dual apply. Okay, so I wanted neurology, but I also applied to internal medicine. But I think that sometimes IMGs, depending on where you went to school, the advice that you're given, a lot of advice can be like kind of fear mongering sometimes. And especially if the particular institution that you go to doesn't know how to actually help you apply to a more like a subspecialty of some sort. And so I think you have to ask yourself, if you dual apply, will you be happy if you match to either or specialty? Because that's the biggest thing, right? Is like if you apply to let's say emergency medicine, like internal medicine, whatever. Like I applied to neurology, internal medicine. I know for a fact that I would not have been happy if I matched into internal medicine. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Okay. I just know myself. And especially after my intern year, I'm like, okay, I'm so happy I'm going into neurology. But like, keep in mind, like there's a chance that you might match into that particular specialty. So if you're dual applying, I think being smart about it, there's things that you can do. Like, let's say if you do want like say a neurology or like an anesthesia or like general surgery, like you can apply to prelim years and transitional years as well, right? Because like those things, like if you don't like match into like a more like an advanced residency program where your training starts like PGY 2 year, you at least have your intern year covered. So I think that when you do make the decision, if you do want to dual apply, just ask yourself seriously, will I be happy if I match into the other specialty? And also keep in mind that you are only contractually obligated for whatever specialty that you match into for that first year. So even if it is the specialty that you thought you wanted and you hate it, you're not locked in, and no one's going to be mad if you switch, even though everyone thinks that they will be, but like that's not true. So talk to yourself, make sure you know that like that's what you want before you actually make that decision, because it is also a very expensive process. So take that into consideration if you decide to dual apply.
Before you go, Edwin, I think Cynthia wanted to add something to Jessica, and thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Jess. That was really helpful. And I just also wanted to echo on what she said. So I also dual apply to anesthesia and internal medicine. Same thing as like what Jess said. I really asked myself questions like, am I going to be happy doing this? How would I feel if I were to do IM for 3 years? So for me, when I applied for anesthesia and IM, I had the thought that if I don't match anesthesia and match into IM, I could go down the IM route and then do like a critical care fellowship and still be able to do something that's very similar to anesthesia. As I went through interview season and, got interviews for anesthesia and IM and prelim, I started really talking to myself, like Jess was saying, and figuring out whether I would be happy doing IM. And my answer was no. As much as I love my IM colleagues on here, I felt like, I couldn't see myself doing that for 3 years. So I still went to my interviews because, you know, that's still a good experience and a good opportunity for you to go. You can figure out if that's something that you want to do. You can get to know the programs, and it's also just a good chance to practice your interviews. And then when it came to putting my rank list together, I decided not to rank any of my IM interviews and only ranked anesthesia interviews and all prelim programs that I applied to / interviewed at. So, you know, like Jess said, being able to apply and interview at prelim programs is really important and really helpful, because if I hadn't matched anesthesia, I would have hopefully matched a prelim, and I would have been happier doing prelim than retrying again the next year, you know, going to an anesthesia program rather than doing 3 years or being tied down to an IM program. And on that note, I also wanted to answer one of the questions that someone asked about prelim. You know, what do you look for in a prelim program or prelim year? And I think one of the biggest things I looked at when I was applying for prelim programs and prelim year was how well the prelims matched the year after. So that's a question I asked at every interview that I interviewed at for prelims. How many of your prelims ended up matching into an advanced position or, like, you know, a categorical position? And how many of them had to redo a prelim year? I think that's a good gauge to figure out if the prelim program you're going to is, in a sense, like, you know, using you as extra labor, or as someone that would be able to help you to like advance clinically.
Thank you, Cynthia. Edwin.
So in the interest of, you know, having a nice conversation, and not that I'm disagreeing with you all, I'm just going to bring a different opinion, a different point of view about this topic. I didn't do dual applying. And that's something that, you know, for the people in Metro Resident who have seen my takeovers, is something I actually argue against. And the reason is because when you're applying, and I usually try to do like it's more like a person by person type of scenario. But if I were to grab like the majority of the pooling of the data of all of the applicants, I do notice something. One is usually IMGs have some lack of US clinical experience, and they have to choose between which field should they go or pursue clinical experience. So the other thing is that the inputs that I have from my program director, I usually have like a very great relationship with my program directors. And I have had the pleasure to kind of be very friendly with mine in neurology and mine actually in internal medicine in Georgetown. And there is something that they have brought so many insights on this kind of side of the application process that nobody tend to know. And something that to me was actually very, very shocking is that they said, I want applications that breathe and say for sure, like unequivocally, that this person wants to be in this program. So just picture that you had to choose and you want to do some dual applying, which is totally fine, but you only have certain experience in this field. As soon as you send all of those applications to the other field, those program directors are going to notice that. You know, these are very seasoned people. You know, we matched, we did great. You know, I'm not saying that people who do dual applying doesn't end up making it happen, but these people are very seasoned and they know what they're doing. I mean, we did it for 1 year and now we're just trying to, you know, give our insights to help everyone out. But these people have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. And then so they know very well what they're doing. I'm sorry. So one of the things that they all the time tell me is they always look at the letters of recommendation. They always look at what type of research they have done. They always look at what type of clinical experience they have, you know. And then if you let's say you have clinical experience in internal medicine, but you're applying to psychiatry, there's going to be a dichotomy there, it's not really kind of making sense there. So they really want applications that are tailored to X, Y, Z program. Some IMGs, what they do is that they pay for clinical experience. And by all means, if you can pay 6 different clinical experience, that is going to give you 6 letters of recommendation, 3 on internal medicine, 3 on family medicine, by all means, go for it. If you have the means to it, then great. But I know for a fact from people who have done this before, 1 month of clinical experience, like a paid clinical experience, can go from 3,000 to 5,000 bucks. So it's not something kind of easy or affordable. And then you have to apply to X, Y amount of programs. So I usually try to go to the mass or to the vast majority of the applicants, and then I usually try to argue against that, because I think that you need to have an application that is completely tailored, error-free on that special field that you really want to get into. And if you still want to do dual applying, then that's fine. You can still do it. But just bear in mind that those program directors, they know what they're doing. They're going to see those applications and they're just going to dismiss some of those if they seem or they feel like you're kind of dual applying, because some of them tend to have that type of recognition of these things. So buyers beware, okay? If you want to do it, by all means do it. But from my experience and from what they do, some people are just going to thrash your application, and you don't have to, don't throw your money where it's not really going to make bang for the buck.
No, it's good. Thank you, Edwin. We need to hear all perspectives. And I will resonate and echo with the one thing that he said, is that your application needs to look so tailored to what you're applying to. So if it means that you have an extensive list of family medicine experiences or internal medicine, and it looks like you could apply to both specialties, make sure your application screams that specialty. Caitlin.
So I pretty much agree with everything everyone has said so far. I think everyone has made really great points on both sides. I also did not dual apply. And sort of similarly echoing what Jessica said earlier about keep in mind that medical schools and a lot of advisors that is their job, right? They are advisors. They went to school to advise based off of statistics. They did not go to medical school and go through this process themselves. They went to school, they're given statistics. They say, this is what we need to do to keep our match rate at this. So this is what we recommend. They don't take everyone's individual application into consideration. They say, this is the general rule of thumb, and this is how we're going to counsel everyone. So that's something very important to keep in mind. And that's one reason I decided not to apply to a backup specialty, despite being told to apply to a backup specialty. I wanted to do internal medicine. I didn't want to do anything else. I think Esha's right in the sense that there is a lot of overlap between specialties, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I love primary care. I want nothing to do with children, and I don't really want anything to do with pregnant women. So why would I do 3 years of family medicine residency when I could just do internal medicine and take care of adults? So that being said, there's also, if you're applying to something like internal medicine, family medicine, even pediatrics, there are, I think, like 800 and some internal medicine programs, right? Why would I apply to a backup specialty when I'm not even going to apply to all 800 internal medicine programs? It just doesn't make any sense. If you aren't getting interviews, like internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, they're all around the same like competition level, right? If you're not getting the interviews in internal medicine, you're probably not going to get that many additional interviews in the backup specialty that you're applying to. Will you get some? Yes. Will they be of the caliber you want them to be? Probably not. But that's just something to keep in mind. Just remember that people who are advising you oftentimes are going based off of statistics. They're not taking your individual application into consideration. And you kind of just have to do what's best for you. That also being said, you kind of also how Jessica mentioned, just because you match into a specialty doesn't mean it's the end all be all. Again, echoing Esha in the sense that there is overlap between specialties. So I actually know someone who wanted to do OB and matched her backup, which is family medicine, and not happy at all. So number one thing to keep in mind, there is a chance you can match into this backup specialty and you might not be happy. However, she does plan to do an OB fellowship. Will she ever be able to operate independently? No, but she will be able to at least fulfill that passion that she has within family medicine. Likewise, I know someone who matched family medicine when they wanted to do emergency medicine, now planning to do like rural EM or rural family medicine, because you get to do a lot of procedures, you deliver children, you essentially are you're the internist, you're the pediatrician, you are the emergency room doctor in rural areas. And so again, that's one way that he's going to be able to, channel his love for emergency medicine despite being relatively unhappy in family medicine. And so, I think the take home point is really reflect on it's easy to say, like, before you kind of spend all this money, this is everyone's lifelong goal, becoming a doctor, matching in the United States. But don't forget that, like, you have some stake in this too. Like, do what's going to make you happy. Like, sure, it's expensive. You can always reapply. If you match into something and you don't really like it, yes, you can change. But just keep in mind that you have to decide if you are more set on enhancing your application and putting all your eggs in one basket and going towards what you're passionate about, or if you are going to be truly, genuinely happy with just matching and practicing whatever, with the hopes and high likelihood that you can make it into a career that you're ultimately going to enjoy.
Thank you, Caitlin. I want to get to more topics, so let's just hear, I guess we'll finish. Yeah, Mana, Arti, and then Avantika. Just keep it quick, I hope.
Yeah. I agree with everything, but I just want to say one point. Like, I applied to both IM and neurology, and I think it was a good decision because I got like equal number of interviews from both, and it was a very last minute decision. So basically, like in India, like suppose in my country, you have to do 3 years of IM and then you get a fellowship in neurology. So basically, it's like they are very similar approaches. And I would say that if you're interested in neurology, if you're interested in, if you have a good amount of research, uh, and if you have the chance to like do even one rotation in neurology, you can tailor your letters of recommendation in such a way that you can ask your preceptors to recommend you for neurology as well as internal medicine. Because when I interviewed at the neurology programs, that's what I got. They were impressed by the fact that I had a lot of research in my application, and a lot of it was related to like stroke and topics that go well with both internal medicine as well as neurology. So I would say that if you're not sure till the very end which specialty you want to go, uh, just tailor your personal statement as well as your letters of recommendation so that you could fit into both of them. And if you have the chance, if you have the time, you can do rotations in both. You can do rotations in neurology as well as internal medicine. And like Caitlin said, there are 800 programs for internal medicine, but as IMGs, you can realistically only apply to say about 300 that would like meet your criteria, that would be IMG friendly, or like for especially for people who are visa requiring. So you don't have the liberty to apply to a lot of internal medicine programs and like have the benefit of like you don't have the confidence that you will match there. So if you have that uncertainty, there's no harm in applying to two specialties. Even with family medicine, I know someone who applied to both internal and family medicine, got equal number of interviews. She matched into FM and she's equally happy there. So I think this is a very personalized approach. But if you are deciding on applying to two specialties, just make sure you tailor your application accordingly. Like, be smart about it. And yeah, and don't apply to like both specialties in the same program. I would not suggest doing that because people talk, program directors talk amongst themselves. So yeah, that's my personalized opinion.
I think since we have like huge topics to cover, I'm just going to give you guys 1 minute. And then from there, we're going to just do 2 minutes per topic. I will say you can dual apply, speaking from experience, at the same hospital. I don't know if program directors have enough time to talk about each applicant that applied to both their categorical and prelim position, but I don't know. I'm not a program director, so yeah, anyways. Arthi and then Avantika.
Okay, I just want to talk from a student's perspective. If you do plan on dual applying, make sure you're keeping track of all your documents, right? You should be having like 2 separate personal statements tailored to each specialty that you're interested in, and the same should go for your letter of recommendations. Like, you don't want a letter that's specifically designating you for peds being sent to an IM program. So just keep those little details in mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what everyone said, and for PEDS specifically, I do know that a lot of people apply for PEDS as a backup specialty, and having spoken to like program directors and programs, it's something that they're completely against. So if you're applying to, for example, internal medicine programs, so done your rotations in internal medicine, and you're applying to PEDS as a backup just because you don't want to go and match, so you're applying there as a backup, it's not going to reflect very well in your PEDS application. Like program directors in PEDS specifically know when they're being applied to as a backup versus when someone's really interested in PEDS. So make sure that even if you're dual applying, you do have the necessary experiences and the letters of recommendation in that specialty, because otherwise it's just like a waste of your money, because you'll just be applying to programs and it's so expensive, and at the end of the day your application wouldn't be looked at because it's not tailored to that specialty. So I was just putting out a PEDS perspective on that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We are going to move on to quickly talk about letters of interest versus letters of intent. We're going to spend like maybe 5 minutes on that topic and then jump into specially specific info where all the ambassadors in their respective specialty will give you some little insight and advice. So letters of interest and intent, in my opinion, I sent them to, and I uniquely personalized them to each program. I spent the time that I had to do. I also was off, so I had more time. I wasn't really doing much. I was just working as a scribe. So I would definitely recommend sending letters of interest to update any program, any research you've done, any additional step 3 that you've done, something actually kind of unique about you and your application that will get them to read your application. I remember one of my subject lines for one of my letters of interest was, I did not copy and paste this. This is an actual real email. And the program director forwarded it to his program. So there was that. So be unique, be you, and do send them. Let's go around.
Just before we start, I think it is important. I think we kind of throw the terms letters of intent and letters of interest around synonymously, and they are a little bit different. So I think letters of interest typically refer to, those emails you're sending roughly around like this time of year, maybe like as applications start to go out in the next, or as interviews start to go out in the next month or so. About how you're interested in a program, you're hoping to interview there, et cetera, et cetera. They should be incredibly personalized. I do recommend putting a picture of yourself and your AAMC ID at the signature of your email, because if program directors have to do work, they're honestly probably going to ignore your email. They're reviewing 2,000 applications a year or more. So if you just put it there for them, they can copy and paste it, and it makes their life easy, and they're more likely to actually use the email. The other thing is make sure they are actually personalized for the specific program. 1, it makes you look like you're interested. 2, it makes you look like you did your research. And 3, if you are writing about how, you're interested and excited to come to this program that does a lot of research, and they're a community program that doesn't really ever send anyone to conferences, it's a little bit awkward, and they're definitely going to reject you after that. So you have to remember that you have the potential to benefit yourself, but you actually do have the potential to harm yourself also. So that's letters of interest. Letters of intent is more so being referred to when you are making your rank list and you are sending programs emails. You are my number 1. You should not tell anybody that you're there, that they are your number 1 if they are not, because it's going to be very awkward on match day if you match somewhere that is your number one and it's a disaster. And remember that this is also a networking opportunity. You are making connections throughout this entire process, and the medicine world is small, people know people, and they're going to remember things like that. The other thing is, don't freak out, and also be mindful if a program specifically says no post-interview communication, right? ACGME and AMC are supposed to be promoting no post-interview communication, because the whole idea of not communicating is that it takes stress off the applicants. So they're trying to discourage programs from actually doing this at all, and discourage applicants from doing this at all. However, I bring this up because my number one, which is the program that I'm at now, specifically told me on interview day, do not communicate with at all, not a single email after the interview is over. So please don't do that. So if they tell you not to, don't do it. Don't freak out. All my friends were sending letters of intent, and I was like, oh my God, I need to be sending it. I just didn't, and I'm here, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Perfect. Thank you, Caitlin. Anybody else want to weigh in on that, or should we just jump into specialty topics?
Next, I think she explained very good.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Caitlin covered it all.
I will just add, do not hammer email people.
Yes.
Just don't do that. Like, it doesn't matter how stressed you are. It doesn't matter if you feel like overnight you come with this kind of nightmare that you're not gonna match and you start going crazy. Just don't do that. One email is sufficient. You have an update, email back. My paper has been published, email. Something that is meaningful. Other than that, just don't hammer email, because that's just a recipe for failure. Trust me.
Perfect. Okay, so I feel like this is a really great topic that we're going to go into. We will start with, let's start with Jessica, and let's do neuro, and then Edwin also can chime in about this as well.
Okay, so I am a neurology resident. I match neurology. I actually had an interesting situation with my particular schedule for when I did electives. When I actually physically applied to neurology, I didn't actually have a letter of recommendation. I was in my rotation, my elective rotation. So for people who are like IMGs or sometimes Caribbean medical schools, with your I don't know, just your rotation cycle and schedule and stuff, sometimes you won't be able to get that elective in soon. So if you are in that situation, I would recommend contacting any program saying, hey, I don't have a letter, but it's coming. For neurology specific stuff, honestly, statistically speaking, I probably should have never matched, but I didn't really have a whole lot of neurology based research stuff. I had experience with it in grad school, and then some in med school. I had really strong letters. Whatever specialty you are applying to, I mean, make sure you understand what programs want for their letters, okay? Because I literally had one letter of recommendation for neurology, but it was strong. But I also used a letter from psych, which is relevant with neurology stuff because you do psych rotations. And I think the other thing, as far as where you're rotating or where you're interviewing, is make sure that they have the specialty that you would want to go into, because that's also important when you're looking at programs. Understanding, also if it's a newer program versus an older program, room for change, things like that. As far as I know for my program, it's a newer program, but it's been a couple classes have graduated already. So those are other things to take into consideration. There's new neurology programs popping up every year. There's more now than even when I applied. And yeah, I mean, important questions again is if you're interested in stroke, make sure it's a comprehensive stroke center. Understanding where you're rotating, if you're in one hospital versus multiple hospitals. Understanding, I mean, with any specialty really is just your schedule and if you have clinic on a weekday versus you have a clinic week, things like that. Trying trying to think what else. I don't know. I mean, I love neurology. I don't really know else, like what else to think about it or say about it. I didn't really have good advice like from my school. So I went to someone specific who was in neurology. I think that's the biggest thing, is finding someone who is in the specialty that you're in, who can guide you in that whole process of going about like applying to that specialty. Because like Caitlin said before, some people are just, as far as advisors, they just want good statistics. They're not always going to be the ones that are like living your life. They're not going to the residency for you. So making sure you're getting good advice from someone who is in that specialty, I think is important. So Edwin, take it away from whatever I missed.
Well, that was pretty awesome. So my experience, it was a little bit different. I actually, I started working as an MA, and then 6 months later, for some serendipity reason, a fellowship spot in multiple sclerosis and neurology was available. And then I basically just say, hey, can I take this position? And they say, sure, you pass your steps already. And I was like, yeah. So they were like, okay, let's go ahead and do it. And I just effectively became a fellow. MS is still not ACGME credited. It's just like one of those fellowships that are still kind of in the making. So there was not like a lot of regulations for that. So I was able to kind of just be a fellow. And then I was inpatient, outpatient. So by the end of that year, I was able to collect 4 letters of recommendations from neurologists with subspecialties in 4 different fields: stroke, movement disorders, MS, and the German. So, I guess that maybe that's why I feel a little bit more confident. I just applied for like 30, 40 programs where I really wanted to be, which is something that I usually don't recommend. I think IMG should apply to whatever they are qualified to apply for, like whatever filter you have. So moving into that, even every field that you apply to will have like, like stronger, more competitive spots than the others. So I don't really buy that, oh yeah, this is like a friendly, or this is like an easy program. Every program will have some like very difficult spots to get based on the branding or the reputation of the program. So just be mindful that neurology has the same type of rules of engagement. You can apply whatever you think as an applicant that you can fit. Like if there are programs who put filters, don't throw your money there. If you don't have those filters, if you don't qualify for those caps. And I noticed that people do that anyways. Like you just like, I'm just gonna apply, and you just throw the money there. And trust me, as soon as the filter comes in, your application is just tossed and never even reach the desk of whoever is going over those programs. So don't set yourself a failure. I mean, just put your money where you're going to get some benefit from it. My program right now, I will also echo what Jessica just said. You have to look for the reputation of the program. Right now at Georgetown, we just got approval from another resident. So it's going to be a program for 8 residents per year, which is kind of just building towards that, like a very robust program. We have like an amazing network. Also look for that. You need to look for a network of hospitals that is going to show you the crazy zebras, but also the bread and butter, because that's something that you are going to be doing on a regular basis in your private practice or whatever you end up doing your like a professional practice. Finally, I also say that if like Jessica said, if you're looking for fellowship programs, you need to see how the placement, how many fellows or how many residents enter into fellowship in which areas, in which hospitals. Something really great about our program is that we now have like a close relationship with the NIH. So there is no problem in terms of money for research. Like they're just like a blank check because it's the government. So it's just pretty awesome. And then those are the kind of things that brings program to the top. So that's some of the things that you really need to be in the lookout. Well-being, ability, and funding for research that many programs do have and others just don't have. And just be aware that the more perks that a program has, the more competitive it will be. So you need to be prepared for the interview season, for your CV, and it's just not about scores. You know, if you have good scores but your CV is lacking in every way and it's just not well tailored and has some errors there, you're just going to be dismissed. You know, your application is not going to make it there. So yeah, that's something that I will say. Yeah.
Thank you, Edwin. I think we spent a lot of time on neuro. If you guys have any other questions for the neuro people, please reach out to them on their IG. I would like to ask whoever needs to go immediately, Caitlin, I don't know, Jesus, I don't know, Cynthia, if you guys need to go, I know you guys are busy and stuff. Do you want to talk about your topics? I am an anesthesia, and then you guys can all leave. Thank you so much.
I feel like, is there anyone else who's doing internal medicine here? No?
Yeah, I'm doing
Oh,
medicine.
sweet. Awesome.
I just started though.
Do you want to go first?
It's okay, you can go.
Okay. I tend to talk a lot, so just go first, just in case.
Okay. So for internal medicine, I mean, basically for all specialties, I think the basic criteria is the same. But for internal medicine, there's the kind of application that you're making, I guess, depends on which kind of programs you're applying to. So if you're aiming for a really competitive program, like Edwin said, uh, some programs have very strict criteria. That's what I understood while I was researching programs. So if they have mentioned that they only accept people above 240s, you need to have minimum 3 months clinical experience. You should go by it. And because I've seen my friends doing that. It's like you're applying to Cleveland Clinic, and they've written specifically on their website that they won't accept anyone who does not have 3 months of minimum 3 months of clinical experience, which does not include observership. So that kind of thing, you don't ignore it and you don't waste your money on it. I would agree with that. And internal medicine, so there are so many kinds of programs like university affiliated, community. Each one is looking for a separate thing. So you have to tailor your personal statement for different kinds of programs a, a little bit differently. If you have a good amount of research, you can target those good university programs that focus on research. So while searching programs, instead of only looking at lists, like going on Residency Explorer, the Master Resident list, or Frida, I would suggest go on to each program's website individually and just look at what the feel is, what their motto is, what they're looking for in their residents, uh, what are their top qualifying, like look at the current residents list, their credentials, because that gives you an idea of what kind of people are working there and what is their agenda. So instead of just going by lists, what I did was just went to each program's website, looked at their criteria, what schools their residents went to. And I think in general for internal medicine, you need to have letters of recommendation that are tailored to internal medicine, your rotations in internal medicine. Some people ask me this question that can we have cardiology or nephrology rotations when we are applying for internal medicine? I would say yes, that you can have one or two of them, but mostly I think people prefer if you have internal medicine rotations instead of just specializations, like rotations that just include specializations. And yeah, I think that's it. I mean, and also some people ask me, is research necessary? And that's another question that I've been answering repeatedly, that I think programs are not just looking for high quality research in the sense that they want, oh, that you've worked on this topic or this topic. In internal medicine, if you have research, it means you know the basic research methodology, you know how to perform a research. And I think that is more important to the program, that you know how the process works, instead of if you just have nine papers and you're just third or fourth author and it's not substantial. So just don't fluff up your CV, focus on focused things. And yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Manat just said. I think the reason, like, I always worry about talking too much about internal medicine is because honestly, it's really, there's a lot of factors I feel like that go into deciding where you're going to apply, right? So as she mentioned, like community versus combined versus university programs, like that's one thing you have to think about. And then even within those, you have a bunch of different tracks, right? There's med ed tracks, there's primary care tracks, there's research tracks, there's bioethics tracks. And it can honestly be really overwhelming because you think that you just have to figure out which programs to apply to, but really you have to figure out, you know, whether you want to do community or university, and then you have to figure out all these different tracks, and like like how to tailor your application towards those as well. So actually, I think IM might be one of the more overwhelming application processes in general, because first of all, it has the most programs, and second of all, there's like sub things to all 800 and change like programs that there are. So I would say, you know, again, echoing pretty much everyone who said this, look at where your credentials are going to be accepted. That's the best thing you can do to make sure that you're getting interviews. If a program doesn't sponsor your visa and you need a visa, there's literally no point in applying. They're not going to miraculously just sponsor one for you. Like, I hate to be the one to tell you that, but it's just not going to happen. Please save your $27 or however much ERAS applications cost, and put it into a different program that does sponsor your type of visa that you need. The other thing is, again, I know this has already been mentioned as well, just echoing how important it is, especially when you have an overwhelming list to choose from. Where do they accept students from? Like, do they accept US DOs? Do they accept US IMGs? Do they accept non-US IMGs, etc.? That's important. Schools that people came from, also important. Have they taken people from your school before? Have they taken people from your country before? Probably a high chance that they'll also look at you if they've looked at other people with similar backgrounds. Have they looked at your, or what's your step score? What range does it fall into? Remember that on FRIDA, they, at least theirs is the like average, right? So if you have a 235 and the program takes 240, that doesn't mean don't apply. An average is people above and people below. And so if you're around the average, you can still apply. If you have a 205 and they're asking for like their average resident has a 260, that is a big difference, and it's probably not worth applying there, but there's still going to be a bunch of programs you apply to, right? So that's how you kind of narrow down, you know, which programs to apply to in internal medicine to begin with, right? Figure out where your credentials are. Second thing is figure out what you want to do, right? If you're a very research focused person, you are probably going to be looking more at university programs and university community programs, like the combined. Doesn't mean that if you go to a community program, you can't do research. It just means that it's not as commonly done because they tend to they just don't do as much research, or perhaps like they rotate at different centers and they don't see as many like zebra cases, but they have like a really good core in like the foundations of medicine. So that being said, I think the things to look for are, one, use the program websites, as Manat also mentioned, and two, nowadays, like, you guys have no idea how lucky you are that social media is your friend. Go on the program's social media page. They literally have people doing takeovers. They have residents interacting with one another. Like, they're doing, like, as someone who is trying to figure out how to make this the best possible experience for you guys when you're interviewing, like, they're doing all of this for you. They're not doing it for themselves. They're literally doing it so you guys can get the best feel for their program. We know that it sucks that you can't be here. So we're trying to do things to make you like feel welcome, feel at home, and like get a sense of like whether or not you want to be here. And the last thing I think to touch on is change. So this is like my biggest pet peeve, because when I was going through interviews, people always told me, you know, always ask the program directors in the interview about what changes are coming and use that as a red flag. False. As a resident, if my program director didn't respond to change, I would literally go crazy, because every single residency program, believe it or not, the good ones and the bad ones, all have things that they can be working on. They all have residents who are complaining about things because we're overworked and underpaid. And there's always things that they could be doing better. And so program directors who are responsive to change probably value your opinion because they're trying to change it for you. program directors who have been there for 65 years and doing the same thing over and over again and are set in their ways, they are not going to be interested in responding to change. And so that 24-hour call every fourth day is probably going to stay there throughout your 3 years of residency versus like my program, which has actually taken them all away. So just don't let people tell you that asking about change is a bad thing, because asking about change is actually a very, very good thing. And I feel like that gives you a good insight to programs, not a bad.
I love that. Love that. Take it away, Cynthia, with anesthesia, please.
I felt like Caitlin covered it for every specialty. So I guess just a few things for anesthesia that's different, I guess, to everything else is as an IMG applying to anesthesia, clinical rotations are probably one of your most important thing. Scores are important. Research is like hit or miss depending on the programs you apply to, but having clinical experience in anesthesia is, I would personally say, the most important thing if you're applying as an IMG. Because with your US clinical experiences, you get, networks, you get your letters, mentors, and people who are able to write about how you did anesthesia in the US and also be able to vouch for how you perform, in the OR. So when I was applying, anesthesia was getting more and more competitive for IMGs. And I know in the past 2 years, the match rate for IMGs were pretty low for anesthesia. So the big things that I think really helped me with my application was my USCE, even though by the time I applied, it was 2.5 years old. I still stayed in contact with the mentors and people I did my rotation with. They wrote me my letters. Whenever I got an interview, they made phone calls for me to the programs I interviewed at to kind of like, vouch for me or gave them like a heads up about me. And also things that helped me were, having like work as a doctor abroad. So I know a lot of IMGs would be applying, having worked as a doctor or an intern abroad. Those things really do help you. I know a lot of people who always doubt whether or not working as an intern or doctor abroad helps. They do help. Even if it's in your home country, it really does help because you're coming in showing them that you have, X amount of years of clinical experiences. And you're coming in, having worked in, an under-resourced country for some of you, or like from a different environment with different skills that programs here may not have seen. So those are things that I really think helped me. And finally, for me, I had like a big geographical preference. I had to stay in the New Jersey, New York area. So emailing programs letters of interest and then letters of intent after I interviewed, and telling them why I wanted to stay in this area, like why it was important for me to stay here and what I loved about their program were things that helped me. And I'm happy to answer more questions about applying to anesthesia. I just don't want to take up anyone else's time tonight.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, please, everybody, if you have questions, you know where to find us. We're all on the Match a Resident page. We all are tagged there. If anybody needs to go, I know it's past 8:30. You guys can go, but we will continue with Peds from Avantika, or whoever wants to go next.
I can go.
Jesus, do you want to go? I mean, I think because I can go later. I still have time.
So okay. Yeah, Zeus, yes, please. Sorry, I missed you.
Okay, general surgery. It's very different. Depends if you are US grad or IMGs. Both. General surgery is a very, very competitive field. I feel that the most important things, as many of you have already said before, the clinical experience is key in surgery. If you have time to do some rotations as a US grad, try to get more experience in the OR, because that experiences in the OR is going to give you a great letter of recommendations, specifically from program directors and in those hospitals that you are doing your rotation. Is very, 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 very important. When you are doing those rotations, please, it's usually the PD is not the one who writes the letters. Sometimes the chief residents or the other residents are the one doing those letters for him. Of course, he's the one signing, but be very, hardworking and help a lot the residents, because they are the one who's going to talk good or bad about you as a student for that specific letter of recommendation. For people who is IMG like me, I did have my clinical experiences just because I work as a surgical first assist. So I met a lot of surgeons. All my letter of recommendation were from US surgeons, and that helped me a lot. But if you cannot work because you don't have a working permit, try to find those rotations that you can pay, but try to find at least 1 or 2 letters of recommendation from surgeons, US surgeons. It's very important. A lot of programs, won't read your application if you don't have clinical experience here. So that can link the US clinical experience with the LORs. The third thing is the networking. I always say that networking is key for every for all these specialties. But try to show yourself, use social media, use all the tools that are available out there. Try to put your name on the out there. A lot of programs, a lot of program coordinators know who is who. It's a lot of people applying, but if your name it's being shown in different social media from different programs, different conferences, that's gonna help you. Okay, I'm trying to use the tools like the master resident tool to try to be very specific in which program you fit. Like as Cynthia says, and all the Caitlin said, there's some programs that you can apply. There's some academic programs, there's some community programs. So be mindful. I knew that because I was an old graduate and IMG, I did have some red flags. Some program won't even take a look to my application. So I went more for the community approach, in communities that more Latino communities, in programs that I saw Latino faces in their websites. So try to use those tools. Those tools are there that you pay for, and they're very good, for the selection of the program. And the top of all of shine in that interview. That interview, I think, is the thing that will, general surgery is a 5-year program. The residents won't take somebody who is boring or you looks like problematic on the interview, or is try to be humble, to be proactive, to be positive. Try to show how you are in the interview. I think that's very important. I'm available if you have any question. I don't want to take more time, but those are my advices for general surgery.
Thank you to all the ambassadors so far. I really appreciate all of you guys just coming out and giving us your time on a weeknight at 7:30. Really appreciate it. Yes, continue with peds, please.
Okay, so for peds, there's, I think, the most important thing, and I'm just passing on advice that I've gotten from my seniors who already matched, since I am an applicant this year, but I'll be really happy to pass on the advice, what they gave me. So for peds, I guess the most important thing is to show interest to the specialty. Like I said before, a lot of peds programs sometimes get applied to as a backup. So they really want to know, are you really interested in peds, or are you just applying for the sake of applying? So that's the most important thing. USC tailored to peds, that's again something that they really, for most programs, do require you to have 2 to 3 months of USC in pediatrics specifically. Letters of recommendation, definitely, especially if you're an IMG, letters of recommendation from US physicians will definitely give you an edge over anything else. At the end of the day, I feel for peds, what really matters is how interested you are in that specialty and how your application shows your interest. When it comes to scores, a lot of people ask, like, are my scores good enough for peds, or what are the cutoffs? Most programs do say that they would prefer applicants having 220 or above in both the exams. But personally, I do know my own seniors who have matched with attempts and with lower scores than that. So at the end of the day, I do believe, and this is what I've heard, that peds do check all your applications holistically, and they really want to see how, whether you care about peds as a specialty. Are you going to be okay with like screaming children all day long? You know, are you actually going to fit into their program? I think that's the one thing that they care about. Every peds rotation that I've been in, the peds, I mean, I'm sure like everyone can say this for all specialties, but the peds like community just seems like a family. It's like it's like a close-knit space where everyone just like mingles with everyone. So I think at the end of the day in interviews, all they want to know is, are you a good fit for the program, and do you like peds in general? So apart from this, your application just needs to be holistically tailored to peds, and that's the advice that I've gotten, and I'm happy to pass it on.
I think some of our panelists are leaving. Once again, thank you guys so much for your time. For anybody that does have questions now, I will be here until 9. I will give you that.
I can hang out for a little longer too. So I'm an hour behind everybody on the East Coast.
Oh, very nice. Do we have any other specialties, or I can just talk about family? Did I miss some specialties? Okay, just for family, if you are applying for family, and I hope that you do, please, it's a great, probably one of the best specialties ever. Sorry, guys. No, I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. I'm getting a dirty look from Caitlin right now. Oh, no.
That's me. I'm reading the chat and I'm blind.
That's her thinking.
That's why my eyes are squinting. No, this was amazing.
Yeah. If you are applying to family, I think the biggest thing is that they want to know you're not applying to family as their backup. They get scores from people in the 240s, and they can really tell that they're using family as a backup, and they just discard your application. So doesn't matter what your scores are, what your red flags are. Family medicine is more accepting of some of these stats, but I will say your app does need to scream family medicine. Did you do a clinical experience in family medicine? So for me, I didn't really have that much clinical experience, but I had more outside like shadowing experience in family medicine. Does your personal statement show that you're interested in any part of family medicine? So yeah, I think like that's really what family med looks for. There's so much that also applies to family med. So if you have done work in mental health, labor and delivery, emergency, even like peds, these are all things that are applicable for family medicine and that can show your interest in family medicine. Yeah, just make sure it doesn't look like you're applying to it as your backup. It won't fly, guys. That's all I have to say about family medicine. I think if there's anybody else that has any questions from the attendees, we will stay here for about 5-10 minutes. And if not,
I think also I just want to keep in mind, like, you are also interviewing at these programs for like where you want to be at, right? Like, it's not, I like compare interview season to like speed dating. Like you're getting to know the program, like they're getting to know you, but you're also getting to know them, right? Like, so they want to sell themselves to you, but you want to, like, it's not just a one-way street, right? Like you should be also like looking for what you want. This is your life after all. It will be the next, like, and when I say your life, like I literally mean you will be in the hospital for like ever. So it should be a place where you think you're going to be happy. At the end of the day, that is what is most important, despite what other people might tell you, that like you just need to match, but like you also don't want to just match and be miserable. So that's very important. Keep that in mind. I mean, one question that I always ask residents during my interview season was like, if you had to do it again, would you pick this program again and why? I was only told once, no, because I think that person had a really rough day. But I ranked that program very low because that person did not look happy. But that's important. I mean, it really is important to like take into consideration, is this where I see myself? Will I be able to get what I want out of the program? Something that I forgot to mention earlier is like, if they don't have your specialty, do you do away rotations? Like, are they invested in their residents to actually help them pursue their goals? Like, that's the biggest thing, because, some people will switch residency, like specialties, because they're just not happy, whatever. It happens a lot more often than you think. But Your happiness is important at the end of the day.
100%. I think somebody has a question. Best ways for IMGs to boost their application with gaps, low scores, longer year of graduation. So I think we can all chime in on that.
Believe in yourself. Stop going crazy about scores.
I matched
Believe
with
in
a
yourself.
197 step one score.
I have
Okay.
a 212.
Like a 197. I passed that bad boy by 3 points.
Yes.
Like it doesn't, like, when I say scores, like, be, please, for the love of God, be more than your score. Like, I mean that because, like, yes, you're gonna be taking tests for the rest of your life, but like, you should be more than just school. Like, you should show that you can do more than just school, because like, they want somebody who can be more than just a number, because like, no one gives a crap about your step scores once you start helping patients. Like, they really don't care. Plus, step one is stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Nice.
Like, you can do it. That's why I'm a huge fan of Match Your Resident, because even with a 197 step one score, I had 9 neurology interviews. Okay. And like,
Wow.
2 like internal medicine, like, well, 1 for invite and 1 interview. So I had 10 with a bad step one score. So like, it is totally feasible, but you need to apply smart. Like, and that does not mean applying out of fear. Like, applying smart means like applying to programs that make sense for you. Like, if they don't support visa, like Caitlin said, please don't apply there. It makes no sense. Applying broad doesn't mean blind. Like, it doesn't mean blind. Sorry, I'll get off my like soapbox, but like, it's like I said, when I said statistically speaking, I probably shouldn't be here. Like, I truly meant it. Like, the entire, like, all the way through. Like, it's, you can do it, but you need to be smart about it. And that's like part of the reason why I love Match Your Resident and everybody who's here, because like, you have specialty specific people to like help you and like tell you. And again, we're not program directors, so you can tell me your scores. I don't know if you'll match. Like, it doesn't matter. You need to have more than just a step score.
Could not have said it better. And for me,
100%.
the way I boosted my application was I showed dedication to my field, and I showed through reference letters or through clinical experience or even through research that, okay, these are my scores, but I love family medicine, and this is why you should choose me.
Join the professional memberships too. Like, be invested in your specialty. I tell everybody that.
Literally go to a conference. I kid you not, my program director is hand reviewing all the people she met at that conference booth. And that's just one program. So many ways that you can boost your applications. Really, what, as Jessica said, you are not defined by your scores.
Try to be connected to the medical field as much as you can. It doesn't matter what it is, just find something that in your application will make the case that, yeah, although I graduated many years ago or whatever, I have been still in the medical practice and I'm not outdated. I'm not rusty. I'm still doing it, you know, I'm still in the game. And that's the only part that I will actually tell you. I mean, great. First, get that imposter syndrome out of your head, you know, believe in yourself, but then start working, you know, you just don't stay there. Just like, okay, you're not gonna low scores. We'll see how it goes. No, do your part. And then that's why this amazing group of people is here, basically giving you all these insights. So you can just start within yourself, believing it a little more and doing like very honest, very smart, not just hard, but smart work to get you where you need to be.
Can I just really quickly add to what everyone has just said? Like, again, with, you know, not just your step scores, but any red flags that you think you have. You know, I went into my application thinking I had a billion red flags. I had 2 years gap. I had, you know, step score lower than what the anesthesia average as a US, non-US IMG was. You know, I had all of the red flags possible, and I didn't think I was going to match. And during my interview process, one of the program directors said to me, I saw that you spoke about, you know, your step score and your red flags in your personal statement. Why do you think you need to speak about that? And those are not things that make a good doctor or hardworking resident. And he was like, you know, to me, a good resident is someone that works hard, that is willing to learn, not your step score. And I'm at that program today. So, you know, like, your step scores and red flags are not everything.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. And just like one final point, I think kind of on that is just remember that, like, no matter how much of a non-traditional path you think you're taking, non-traditional path nowadays are becoming much more traditional than the traditional path. And so just take every experience that you've had. Like if you've been off for a few years, agree with what Edwin said, just do something to show that, you know, you're still up to date with knowledge. But ultimately, like when you're talking in your personal statement, like that is something your time off is something you should address. And you should talk about what skills you bring to the table, because you might be interviewing with, you know, 30 other applicants who went straight from undergraduate through medical school. And now this is the first time they're applying for a job. They may have no real life experiences whatsoever, other than some shadowing and sitting in a classroom for the last 10 years. Like if you have that type of stuff and those experiences, write about them. It does, just because you don't have a specific grade or a specific amount of experiences doesn't mean you have nothing to bring to the table. You just have to do some self-reflection, think about how you've used that time off, and think about how that makes you a better applicant, and write about that. And then the other thing is, remember that all these things are going to like enhance your application, but once you actually get an interview, your application really doesn't mean that much anymore. The top, like at least for internal medicine, the top 4 factors for programs to even rank you have nothing to do with your application whatsoever. It's all about like communication, interpersonal skills, interacting with other residents, how you treat support staff on on interview day, etc. Like all that stuff, like Jess said, matters so much more, because that's who you are as a person. That's who you're going to be as a doctor. Your step score doesn't make you that. Your inherent characteristics can't be taught in the future. Medicine can be taught. Medicine is very teachable. You can learn medicine. Someone can teach you medicine. Someone can't teach you how to be polite. Someone can't teach you how to be respectful. Someone can't teach you how to have empathy, but they can teach you medicine. So just keep all of that in mind.
Keep preaching. I love it.
That was so inspirational, Caitlin, because I mean, that last sentence was just so inspirational. I think I saw a question on what do we do if our scores are below the cutoffs, because even those scores aren't that important if you're screened out by the programs. This is something I have personally witnessed, and this is something that I can say that even though for PEDS, most programs have they say that their score cutoffs are 220 each, but I do have friends and seniors who have personally matched and interviewed at programs with much lower scores. So at the end of the day, even though they put that as a filter or a cutoff, that does not mean that they're not reviewing our application. They will still review our application after they've reviewed the others. So it's not that your application is completely screened out or they're never going to review it. And if, for example, a program really does care that much about scores, then maybe you're not meant to be at that program. Maybe that program is not a good fit for you, because I personally also wouldn't like a program which cares so much about scores and they don't really care about other parts of my application. So don't really worry too much about the score filters and score cutoffs, because from personal experience and from what I've seen, they aren't set in stone. So don't really worry about that.
Just to echo that, I applied to Brooklyn Hospital Center. My step 1 and step 2 did not meet their cutoffs. I still applied because I had my step 3. I got an interview. During the interview, they said, we interview you because you had your step 3 done, and we need all of our applicants to have their step 3 done. I sent them a letter of interest just to show my application, and they still sent me an invite. So while there are filters for every single program, because we literally cannot screen thousands and thousands of applicants, there are ways for you to kind of get around it. That's all I'm going to say.
Also be wary of like programs that only pimp you on questions.
Yeah.
I often asked like during interview season, like, do you have any advice for me? And also I also kept trying to ask people like, oh, like, what are your score cutoffs? Like, if you're there in interviews, don't worry, like don't ask about like scores, but like be wary of programs that just pimp you on questions during the interview and don't actually get to know you. Because that usually means that they just kind of want to know where you're at as far as like teaching and like, yeah, just that was like directly from someone I interviewed, like where I interviewed, like be wary of those programs because they're not always the best. So
no, I had an internal medicine interview where they just asked me 2 questions, how to work it up. And I was like, what?
I straight up asked, do you want to know anything about me? They said no. I was like, all right, bye. Good talk.
That's a good one.
Toxic programs. Doesn't matter. Guys, you only need one. I always say it every single time. One interview, just one, is what's bringing you apart from the dreams that you have. You don't need a 5, you don't need 10, you don't need 15. You only need one interview, and you're going to be at the other side, and you're going to be sitting probably tomorrow with these great people here, giving some of your insights about what happened. So time goes fast, you know. Just a couple of months ago, I was a PGY1, and then, you know, I'm a PGY2, and, you know, I just keep saying the same things. You know, you only need one interview, prepare, get ready, be ready for prime time, you know, be ready for the game. And I promise you that you're just going to be achieving the dreams that you have.
I completely agree. I was just laughing to myself because I have one thing that's my biggest pet peeve. I dislike when people ask, what's your EMR? So please don't use that as a question during your interviews. It's not a brilliant question.
No, dude, actually though.
Like, it's my biggest pet peeve. So I think you guys have way better questions in your question bank to ask versus than what is the EMR system the hospital uses.
Also, like, if they don't use Epic, is that really going to break your decision to go there? Probably. I hope not. I mean, Epic is substantially better, don't get me wrong, than any other EMR I've used, but like, if I had to use Cerner, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
And you will
Or you
have
could
to
be at
go
a
to the
place where you have to
VA.
use both.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true. I haven't been at a VA, but I've only heard bad things about the EMR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we
There
want
are a few more questions. Do you guys want to answer them? I think they're about interviews. Someone's asked about what should be our approach for interview prep and any specific tips that you want to give since you guys have already gone through the season.
Lighting, invest in good lighting.
Hmm.
You know, it's just silly things. You want to be memorable. You know, right now I'm just using a big lights, like this kind of professional lights that I bought for myself. I'm not going to tell you go and buy $300 in lighting. That's just me, and that I'm crazy and I have a hobby for photography. But good lighting just going to make or break your interview system, because if they don't see your face clearly, you're not going to be memorable. You're just going to be another one who's there. Talk, say something, you know, engage with people. I know if you're an introvert person, this is actually the best way that you have to engage with them. You don't have to kind of see people face to face. You don't have to be in the middle of that uncomfortable kind of scenario where you have to be talking to multiple people if you're an introvert. If you're an extrovert like me, then, you know, it doesn't matter. Just be yourself, you know. But definitely go over it. Don't sit on an interview without having practiced it before. Tell your mom, tell your friends to just do like this kind of mock-ups, and they just kind of ask you funny, uncomfortable questions, and then questions about yourself, you know, and then Google it. I mean, there's so many resources, believe it or not. There's so many resources out there. If you Google mock interviews for residency, you're gonna find hundreds of questions that they might ask you, and they just ask your friends to go over it. I mean, it's the interview season is a referendum of who you are as a person. It's not about scores anymore. It's not about what you know. It's about who you are as a person and what can you bring to the table. And if you can make the case that you are the specific person for that program, you're going to make it happen. If not, it's just going to fall through the cracks. So invest in good lighting, have a good camera, have good like skills in terms of engaging with people, knowing what to ask and what not to ask. And then, you know, that's what the interview is. There's no technicisms on it.
Yeah, I think, sorry, go ahead. No, you can go.
Okay, just two things. If you are having like a struggle, kind of like trying to put together what your response will be, Google the STAR method or YouTube it. It's kind of like a very great way to organize your answers. Another thing is there's little hidden social cues. So one thing that I read about before doing my interview is that I'm going to lean my camera a little bit forward so you can see that I'm talking with my hands. When I'm talking with my hands, that shows I'm more passionate about what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of little social cues that you can do that shows to the programs you are interested in. If you're smiling like this, that's fake. If they see you smile, it's all over here, that's great. If you're on your phone, please, like, I'm not gonna want to have you on my interview, whatever, co-resident. If you're not paying attention, like, just don't do that. That's all I have to say.
I think the only other thing I was going to add was make sure you're doing your research. And by that, I don't just mean look up the program beforehand so you actually have things to talk about on interview day. Like, the whole point of interviews, like, I know they sound really stressful, but they actually, for the most programs, granted, there will be some who are like quizzing you on EKGs and stuff like Jess mentioned, boo. But most of them are actually just very conversational. Like, people just want to get to know you. They want to connect with you. They want to genuinely see if you are a good fit and are going to get along with the people who currently work there. So they're not, most places, again, there are some that are like boo, but like most of them are not trying to trick you. So research goes looking into their program to see what you think you can connect about. Look at who your interviewers are going to be online. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they will tell you who you're going to be interviewing with, at least one or two of the people in advance. Look them up. Maybe they're from your hometown. Maybe you went to the same school. Maybe they're from your country. Maybe they're interested in hiking and rock climbing like you are. Just find something that can make the conversation flow a little bit easier so that some of the ice is already broken. And then the other thing is, research doesn't just go one way. Like, you have to be looking and researching the program. You also have to review your own application. Yes, this sounds stupid right now because you are currently putting in all the stuff into your ERAS application and you've looked at it 6,010 times. However, as interviews start to pass and it becomes December and you haven't looked at your application in a while, and you did, let's say, I don't know, an integrative medicine selective when you were in Grenada, and on your 14th interview in January, someone actually decides to ask you about this in the first time, and you just look at the interviewer like, oh my God, I forgot I did that because I haven't looked at my application. Clearly, I'm speaking from experience. And you just have to roll with it. And they totally could tell I was off guard. Thank the good heavens that I didn't want to go there. So please also periodically review your own application so that you remember the details of what you should be talking about also, especially for research, because if programs do ask you about research, which from my experience in internal medicine, most people didn't really care about my research. Only 2 people asked me about it. If they do actually ask you about it, they're going to want you to be able to like talk about it. Not like I was the last author and you can tell that I'm just on the paper because I was on the team. They are, if you're putting it on your ERAS application, you better be able to talk about it. That's all I will say.
I got asked about hobbies on every single interview.
Yeah.
Every single interview. Also, I used a free Audible book that was called, what was it called? 100 Strong Residency Interview Questions. It was technically for, it looks like this. It was technically for pharmacy residents, but they had like the same questions. So listening to someone like answer questions was helpful. But yeah, I mean, like literally when I say I got asked about hobbies on every single interview, like every single interview, because I put herpetology, which is the study of snakes. So like, I find them very interesting, and like, everyone's like, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, I also like the program that I'm at now, my program director, we talked about rugby. Like it's a conversation. Like you want to get to know people. Like it's people you're going to be with for the next like 3 to 5, 7, 8 years, depending on if you're doing neurosurgery for some reason.
And I also just mentioned that not only did Jessica herpetology as her hobbies, but she also wore a green suit to every interview.
Yeah. But see, the thing is with herpetology is like, I also talked about like the neurobiology of it. So like it worked out. Also, the people who keep asking me like how I overcame my step scores, like I did more than just study and like volunteer people, like do other things, like be more like, I don't know, go outside every once in a while, like do something. And like, especially like, your hobby section is going to be important for your application. Even if you say like, I literally go home and binge Netflix for hours, like who cares? Put it on there, like do it, please.
Yeah, just to echo that, I think there's like a reason why that they ask these hobbies, because they want to know that you have things that keep you de-stressed outside of medicine and what you can do in those times. So that's why they like to ask that. And I think keeping that in mind, there is a set of questions each program will always ask you. Why your specialty? Why this program? What are your strengths? Maybe what are your hobbies, or like, what do you do for stress? So, and tell me about yourself. Like, if you can have a preset answer to these questions going in, it will make your transition for interviews a lot easier. Something I did was record myself, and it was super cringe at first, but then I realized I don't really like half the way I'm talking sometimes. So I don't present myself maturely. So you need to be the one to assess that. So yeah, just my little 2 cents.
Get also ready for kind of these curbside type of questions. Let me tell you one, okay? And then just think about it for a second and see what you will answer. Your program, you're in their interview, you're kicking ass, you're having fun, everything is going so well. And then out of nowhere, the program director asks you, okay, tell me, what would you do if you don't match? Because I got that question and I felt like an empty hole here. I was like, holy crap, what a horrible question to ask. So those usually, that type of curbs questions kind of goes to probe you, you know, how mentally stable you are and what type of answer are you going to bring. You can use humor to answer that question, because honestly, at the end of the day, it's not a question to see if you're it's not a question that goes at the root to make you feel bad. It just goes in to see how would you will answer, how would you overcome hardship. It's a really great question that all of them ask you. Almost all program directors ask this. So I remember, and I actually did it with humor, surprisingly. So he asked me that question, and I say, well, you know what, Dr. XY, if I don't match, then I've noticed that in online dating profiles, people seems to love tacos. So I will definitely go ahead and just put a taco place, and I will do just a taco business, and then I will just leave from there. And then he laughed about it, and then we just kind of move into another questions, but then things kind of die down. That usually tension, and then we just start having like this kind of normal conversation, like a friendly conversation, and I ended up matching in that place. Like, it was my first preference. So they're going to be like curb questions that they're gonna throw at you, and that's why you need to be prepared. But if they give you this type of questions and you don't know how to answer, you say like, I don't know, I think I'm gonna cry, then you need to be prepared for this kind of things.
Also, I got like advice from like a chief resident in like a program who did a lot of interviews, and then she said that because it's virtual again this year, when she observed that the virtual interviews last really long, so people can get tired and all, but make sure to be mindful that the whole period, like someone is watching you, the program coordinator, program director, or like the secretary, or whoever is in that Zoom. Everyone is not watching you, observing you, like whatever you do or whatever you say. And so just be mindful of that the whole time, and like make sure that you look interested and alive and like have energy, instead of like seeming like you're bored, even if you're like super tired and like you may be in the other part of the world where it's like 3 a.m. or anything. Like, make sure you have coffee or water beside you to keep you awake and like be like interested in whatever is happening and stuff. So yeah, that.
Love that. Another thing I just want to add, there are different styles of interviews. Some programs will have you do 15-minute sections, or 20-minute sections might break you up with the residents. And some programs might have their program director, faculty, residents all in one room, and they have a 30-minute interview where they ask you all straight questions. For me, the way I learned about this, and I will say, never go on those dumb Excel spreadsheets, but to look up the info as to how the interviews are styled. And that's what I used. I went into previous ones to see how did programs do their interviews and what I should prepare for. Other than that, please stay off those Excel sheets. They're so toxic.
Yeah, I actually didn't know. So like, obviously I'm old. So like Student Doctor Network was like the thing, and like Reddit.
Yeah.
And they had like pages. We didn't have Excel documents, but I just recently saw so for those of you who don't know, I'm planning to apply for cardiology fellowship next year. And my friends are like all applying, like my classmates are all applying this year, and they showed me this document, and I was literally appalled at the things people were saying. Like literally the most toxic thing I've ever seen. Please don't go on there unless like you're, like she said, looking for something specific, like what's the structure, or the rest of the information you can probably find somewhere else. So just like go somewhere else.
Yeah, literally.
I'm
But yeah,
still
just
shook.
yeah. Honestly, it's a lot of lies. It's a lot of like exaggeration of scores. So yeah, take everything with a huge grain of salt.
Yes.
All right, guys, this was awesome from my standpoint. I'm gonna head out. It was great engaging with you all. For everyone who tuned in, it was an amazing experience. This time is just incredibly exciting. And then I really look forward that next year you're gonna be here with us and you're just gonna text us all these kind of success stories that you had. You only need one. You're gonna make this happen. Believe in yourself. And then I'm just gonna leave you with this rest of amazing physicians on the making to support you in your journey. I am the neurologist. Guys, have a good night. It was great. I love it. Thank you so much.
Edwin, thank you. I think I'm actually going to just close this webinar. We all spent a lot of time. So thank you everybody that came, and thank you to the wonderful ambassadors. I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully we can do more of these in the future. It looks like we got a really good turnout. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.